Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'm gonna go ahead and get ahead of this a little bit. I create a lot of decks internally. I don't do a lot for groups like this. I'm purely doing it because it's fun and I'm excited about it. So definitely want feedback, and I will admit, and it's gonna be very obvious, that I cheated a bit in this presentation. And by that I mean, basically the second half is more or less an all hands that I gave to my team recently about strategy. And I feel you're going to see I didn't change it to be toward you. It's written as if you work here. I wanted to be as transparent as possible and sort of show how folks in my shoes are kind of thinking about all this right now as a means to kind of bring agents into the conversation. So we'll get into that. A little bit about me. I am a CEO, founder of this company. I am also our CPO. My background was on the product and engineering side prior to starting this. I worked for Samsung and Ericsson before starting this. I've worked with hardware, software, consumer business, just about everything. That picture is just a few days ago in Japan with the bowing deer. Something I talked about the last time I was here, that I actually used AI to plan an entire family trip to Japan, and I'm actually going to weave that in a little bit today. So that was actually from that trip just a couple days ago. So I want to start with just a couple slides kind of introducing myself and how I think and our company as a result. But first and foremost, I believe that technology should reduce friction. It should increase our reach. It should bring us joy. We should not be masters to technology. Technology should be there to effectively serve us, at least for now. The reality, and you're going to notice a lot of little Douglas Adams quips around Centercode, this "don't panic" on the wall and all sorts of things here, themed after Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which he wrote. It's my favorite book of all time. And he said something I felt was very brilliant, which is technology is a word for something that doesn't work yet. And I've always thought that was a really brilliant statement. And I've always kind of thought about how once something purely works, we almost innately don't think of it as technology anymore. And I kind of list one of my favorite examples is I wear contacts. I would be very legally blind without them, but I throw them in each morning and I've removed a handicap. At one point, they were the pinnacle of technology, absolutely life-changing, more so than half the things we're excited about today. But I don't think of them as technology. They're just a part of my day. So our company basically exists to make that happen. So we connect companies with their audiences to just build incredible technology that works as intended. This is the last slide about Centercode. We're not here to pitch Centercode, but just to give you a sense of kind of what we do and why we do it. As I said, we help companies engage with audiences. We do this through a user testing platform, a global network, managed services where we help companies run different forms of user tests, beta tests, competitive tests, and so on. And then where this night kind of fits in is we provide a lot of education and research. A big part of our strategy has always been content and kind of building authority. And we don't believe in secret sauce. We publish absolutely everything, which is why you're going to see an all hands tonight. We really do believe in just kind of spreading the wealth of knowledge. So that's going to be an important part of this. I'm going to skip the metrics. You can read them. But in terms of who uses us and what I am frankly most proud of in the world is a lot of really big, important tech companies rely on us. And there's nothing I'm more excited about than the opportunity to help them make great technology for their audiences. When I left Ericsson, again after Samsung, they were big, amazing companies. They were great experiences, honestly. But I realized if I kept my career there, I would only be able to achieve my personal mission for their customers. So I went off and started this company as a means to reach as wide an audience, as sort of a halo effect as possible. So as of this year, I basically do two things. I run Centercode, which takes some time, and then I spend basically every other waking minute thinking about, talking about, and using AI for different things. So as I said, I was in Japan until recently. I came back Saturday afternoon. I've worked 15 hours to 18 hours a day since then, purely excited about things. And you know, when a lot of people say they work 16 hours a day, they're complaining. When I say it in this context, I'm kind of bragging. It has been so fun to get into this stuff. So I want to share that excitement with you guys. Now, the agenda is going to be a little bit misleading because the agent part, which was sort of advertised, is actually only the third part. It'll be a big part, but I really do need to do a bit of a level set to get there because it's a little more advanced than the typical go to ChatGPT and ask a question. So I'm going to start with a bit of a level set, ask you guys a couple questions to get a sense of where we are and what I might be able to skip. I'm then going to move on to something that I kind of consider a practical guide for you. And practical is one of the words I'm going to probably end up using more than I mean to, because I find that a lot of talk in this space is very theoretical. It's throwing out random ideas or getting deep into the tech that doesn't really matter to you. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about how an LLM works. I care about how it works for me. And that's what I want to share with you guys. So when I say practical, that's what I mean. This is things you can walk away with and either do on your phone right now or as soon as you get home. So I'm going to focus a good chunk on that. And then I am going to get an introduction to agents. So I'll talk a bit about that and go into that. I have no idea how long this is going to take. This was made custom for tonight. If I go long, I'm sorry. If I go short, we have plenty of time for questions and answers. You'll get a sense real quickly that I love this stuff. So let's talk about it. To get us started, I'm going to ask some questions, just some hand raises. I don't need anything super techy here. Who uses LLMs regularly at this point? Most of you, great. That's good to hear. Who uses it every single day? Okay, we're going to change that. Whose company actually provides it to them and considers it sort of part of their job at this point? Okay, that number is going to start to go up a lot. Who pays for it themselves? Good to see. And now this is where I get to maybe I'll skip a few things if it's too much. Who knows what and has actually run deep research projects? Okay, I won't be skipping that. And just going one step further on sort of the curiosity scale, who here has actually created their own custom GPT? I knew it was going to be you. Okay, handful. So good. I'm not going into depth on that one, but it is an interesting thing to know. And then lastly, just because we do have a product group, who here is actively working with AI in their own products as far as implementing it or at least thinking about it, working on it? Okay, a little more than half. Good. Okay, so what we're going to cover tonight, non-technical dialogue. I want actionable items that you guys can use, and I want a tactical means to leverage this every day. So that's the takeaway. I'm not going to explain how LLMs work, RAG, context windows, or any of the other stuff. The beauty of this, and probably the most amazing thing about this technology, you don't have to know any of that. You just need some basics and you can rock. So my goal is that you walk away enthusiastic about superpowers that you either have or are going to get better at. Before I do that, and I feel the need always to do this, just kind of given who I am, I do want to talk about kind of where AI sits in the world in terms of the ethics of AI and everything that surrounds it. And the first thing I'll say is, even though hopefully you can sense my enthusiasm, if I could make this go away tomorrow, I would. I would get rid of all AI in a heartbeat despite my love for it. And that's because as fun as it is for me and as much as it kind of keeps me up in a great mood, I'm not personally convinced it's good for the world. And I do think that it's sort of not ideal with humans and capitalism's in the mix. But at the same time, it is what it is. Like we can't, put the toothpaste back in the tube. My job is to run a company. I am responsible for my customers, my employees, and my investors. And the reality is, if I don't have this enthusiasm, if I don't do this, we will get outcompeted. And that's going to be a part of the conversation. So that's important. In terms of some of the controversies, and I'm just going to give my take. This is all, I will say, sort of subjective, but I'm happy to back any of it up, debate it, talk about it. This is stuff I obviously spent a lot of time thinking and caring about. First of all, AI is stealing from authors and content creators as well as artists. Yes, it is. And I have a daughter in art school right now, and I'm a little nervous about that because she's not the biggest fan. Is it depleting natural resources? Yes, it is. Is it wrong sometimes? Yeah, it is. It hallucinates. I had one tell me yesterday or apologize for hallucinating. At the same time, that one is mostly solved if you know what you're doing, so we'll talk about that. Does it just purely make things up? I guess that was the second half of that. Is it can, but again, you can solve it. And it steals my data and trains on it, and the reality is not really. If you approach it right, if you know what you're doing to even the most basics, that is all very easy to limit and deal with. And the reality is the companies making these products know for a fact they wouldn't be able to keep making these products if these things were that open. So not really as big an issue as people are making it out to be. I will say none of these are ideal. They're also not new. This is basically almost word for word what technology has been doing its entire existence. But there's more. There's a whole bunch of things people like to bring up. A lot of people think it's expensive to use. And I just want to point out for anybody that feels that way, it's not. When you talk about sort of the expense of AI, the only time that really becomes true is if you're implementing it in a mainstream product that is going to have an absurd amount of AI usage, then yeah, you're going to have to think about your calls. But from a day-to-day basis, it is virtually free. A lot of people are convinced and concerned that it's moving far too fast. It is, but you don't have to keep up with it. I mean, if you want to be on the bleeding edge and you get excited about it, then you absolutely can and should, and I would encourage you guys all to get excited about it, but you don't have to. What exists today, if they stop developing, would be useful indefinitely, and for the next 5 to 10 years, we'd be coming up with incredible new things to do with it that we didn't think of today. There's too many AI tools to choose from. I'm going to talk a little bit about this one, but the reality is you need one, and it's not even a specific one. There's a variety that kind of serve as that baseline. You don't need to use everything else. You can. There's a lot of exciting stuff out there, but you don't have to. A lot of people are sort of making the claim that it can't replace human creativity. Yes, it can. Flat out. If you think it can't, it can, and I'll show it to you around the clock. Virtually anything you can do, it can do, and often better. It won't replace people. That's the one that gets me the most. It already is. You're going to start to see more and more news about this. If you don't believe this, then you're frankly not really paying attention. I'll talk a little bit more about this later. And again, as a father of 2 teenagers, I'm a little nervous about it myself. But the entry-level jobs in the white-collar world are gone. Like, to think they're not just, again, means you're not really caught up in my world, or in my opinion. But it is a thing we're going to have to deal with. And it's a whole topic on its own, but it's real. And then there's the theory, the more optimist side, which is, it'll create as many jobs as it replaces. I will say, and I'm going to get out of the pessimism here in a minute, I personally don't believe that. I believe we're going to have to change major parts of society and technology to deal with what it brings. I believe it is a threat to the white collar, but not as much initially the blue collar. Everyone in here, I would assume, is on the white collar side, so we do get to think about it. But that doesn't mean it's replacing your job. It just means you need to be one of the people who uses it, and I'll hit more about that. The last one on here is it's just hype. It's another, crypto thing. It's another blockchain. I mean, arguably hype, arguably not hype, but the reality is it's not. It is real. There are more people in this room using AI than ever used crypto in this, in a room this size, or ever used blockchain or any of those things. I mean, they were interesting ideas in their own ways, but this is truly mainstream, and it will affect virtually every company, and especially every technology company in some way. So to get into this, I want to explain my enthusiasm a little bit and kind of where this came to be and how it started. So the way this started was actually a message, a screenshot from Chris Rader, who's sitting in here somewhere, a couple years ago, the first month that GPT 3.5 was out. And he was messaging me for about 3 days solid on Slack and basically saying, we're already into COVID period, so we were already remote. So he's hitting me on Slack. And he's like, you got to check out this GPT thing. You got to check out this GPT thing. And I ignored him, like flat out. I was doing my normal crazy job. I had no idea what any of this really was. I'd played with GPT-2 2 years before, and it was kind of a joke. So I just kind of ignored him. And then to get my attention, and he does this to me once in a while, he just pasted this screenshot. And the reason this screenshot was so material to me is he asked it, create a social post for Thanksgiving themed post explaining beta testing. And the part about this that blew my mind was sort of at the end when it starts to equate the spices on a meal with the beta test on a product, which meant it not only understood how both of those worked, but sort of temporally where they fit. And I just started to kind of unpack what it must have done. And again, this is 2.5 years ago. This technology was completely novel to myself and most others. And it just blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind to the point where I thought he was screwing with me. I thought he was trolling me and this wasn't real. So then he sent me another one and he posted this thing that was effectively a rap about our company. And what was interesting about that, and again, this is less impressive now, but back then it was just mind-bending, was that he didn't tell it anything about our company. It knew who Centercode was. Like, we're a tiny company in the grand scheme of things. This crazy AI thing that was brand new at the time certainly shouldn't have known who we are, what we do, why we do it, but it knew it all already. And that was with, antiquated data at that point. And I just literally, my response was like, I can't process this. And from that point on, we introduced it to a handful of people at Centercode. It spread like wildfire. And I don't think anyone did anything else for the next 3 days. Like, that is all the company did. It's all we talked about. It's all Slack mentioned, was like this crazy AI thing. And from that point on, I was in. I was hardcore in. So shifting gears, how does this apply to your career, your world, which I'm personally a big fan of? And I'm going to quote something, and I don't know if anybody here knows Brent. He's a local product director at Broadcom. He said this to me about a decade ago, and it always stuck in the back of my brain, so much so that when I was working on this today, I took a picture of it and I sent it to him, and he was like, I didn't say that. I was like, yeah, you did. And he's like, that's an egotistical thing to say. I don't think that way. I think about, I kind of hope he gets to see this at some point. He's like, I think I'm smart enough to bring in the smartest people. I was like, no. The reason you said it, and I agree with it, is because the products manager's role is to have an incredibly diverse set of knowledge. You have to understand the business, the product, the market, all these different things, and therefore you have the most diverse sense of that information. And of course you bring in the smart people who are good at their things, but you know a lot about a lot of things, and that's very important. That idea of being the smartest thing in the room is perfect for AI. In the world of history, there's never been anything that allows you to learn like AI does. It is just, again, in my mind, indisputable. When I need to pick something up, I've recently been working in Unix for the first time in 2 decades, and I didn't remember standard Unix commands. I'm not a programmer anymore. but I went through a little personalized training course on Gemini that has this learning coach and learned everything I needed in the course of an hour, to the point where it was telling me to go do something and take a screenshot of it, paste it to it, and it was grading it. And that is a learning tool you can use for free for literally any topic you can imagine. If you want to learn about an episode of a TV show, it'll go teach you about that one episode and create a learning plan with quizzes at the end, and it's completely free. That is what AI is capable of. So in terms of the practical side here, getting into it, the first step that I find is very important, and while everybody kind of has a very high level understanding at the least, a lot of people do mess pieces of this up, is using the right tool for the job. And the first question I do get a lot for people who know that I use this as much as I do is which one do I use? And I'm just going to make it very simple. If you have a choice, many of you don't at a corporate level, use OpenAI's ChatGPT. It's the classic, and it is the most broad of all of them. And I'll talk more about why in a few minutes. Also, if you do not have an account, if you do not pay $20 a month or have access to one, you should. There is often features that are in there and broader usage of features that don't exist. There's larger context windows. There's a variety of good reasons to do it. It is cheaper than Netflix and far more useful. I am also, for the record, a huge fan of Claude. If anybody uses Anthropic or Claude stuff, I think it's incredible, especially for coding. I absolutely love it. I'm warming up to Gemini. Actually, that coaching thing was one of my first experiences. I played with Gemini off and on over the last 2 years, and it was frankly trash most of the time. But in the last few months, they've definitely caught up. That is all fascinating to me because they are sort of the Kodak of this generation. You know, those that might remember Kodak invented digital film, but they sort of shelved it because they didn't want to compete with themselves. And then, you know, eventually they went bankrupt, and they were a customer of ours when they did. Google invented most of what we're using in AI, but at the same time, if they released it, it would have been firm competition with their ad business and everything else they were doing, so they kind of sat on it and let it go until they had no choice. So they definitely kind of started on the back foot versus where OpenAI is, but they are catching up pretty quickly. And it always comes up. A lot of people use Copilot because that's what their companies supply to them. That's the Microsoft side. I have very limited experience with it, and so I can't speak to it too much other than it's just OpenAI on the back end for the most part anyway. I'm just going to keep this one light in terms of tools. I think people that have seen me talk about any of this stuff before, even casually, know that I use many, many tools. I'm not going to focus on all that tonight unless we want to have side conversations or there's questions later. I'm going to focus on a very, very limited set of things tonight that you can, again, use at any point. I also do just want to point out for fun, I have zero interest in any of this, or is it like steak or anything like that. I just use what I love. I use what I enjoy, and that's what I try to spread. Now, in terms of why I suggest OpenAI and ChatGPT as the solution, it's not because, you know, I'm the most ethically aligned with that company or anything like that. They're all evil. But the reality is it has the most broad feature set for an incredibly inexpensive price. And every one of these things are things that everybody in this room can and should, frankly, experience. I'm going to talk more about reasoning models and the importance of that in a minute. But there's a few things that people who used AI very early and got turned off to it and didn't have great experiences, those things have been solved. And I would actually argue that the big two are reasoning and web search. Reasoning is the ability for it to basically avoid hallucinations and provide a best possible answer to you. Again, I'll talk more about that one. And then web search is the ability to augment its own data with whatever it goes out and finds. And you can literally think of it as, if I'm going to go to Google and search for something, fine, if I do it through here, it's going to search for 20 things on Google, bring them together, and bring me the best possible answer. So that one's really important. I'm not going to go through all these. I am planning to give everyone access to this deck, and I did throw some things in speaker notes that I thought might be handy. But this is why I think people should use GPT. I thought earlier today about building a chart as to why, and I just eventually realized it's pointless. Everybody else has some of these features, nobody has all of them, and there are very, very few things that the others have that they don't. The only thing I would argue is if you're deep into video stuff, I don't think they're quite the leader that they once were, but anything else, they are still in the top, you know, either at the top of the pile or switching between first and second place every week or two. Okay. To me, the more important question is, and this is something people mess up a lot, is what model to use. And the main reason for that is these companies are all absolutely horrendous at naming their products, to the point where OpenAI jokes about it on their different streams. Like they went from 01 to 03. 01 and 03 are terrible names, and they skipped 02 because it's a trademark name. Like, see that shit coming. Like, just terrible. So I just want to be very clear, and again, if there's only one or two things you walk away, I'm gonna really drill this one in. On ChatGPT, we have two different sides. We have 4.0, which is an omni model, and all that means is it does a lot of things pretty well. And then O3 is the reasoning model, which spends more time thinking about things. And really what reasoning does is what's called chain of thought. And what that means is it's going to go query it a few times, it's going to compare them against each other, it's going to have a little bit of a debate with itself, it's going to act like multiple people working something out on your team before they give it to you. And that's really all it does, but it is incredible, and it is one of the things that really reduces the amount of hallucinations and bad information you'll get. I threw the rest on here for anybody that does use the other tools. Anthropic, of course, had to go in an entirely different direction. They have very cute names for their products, but they don't separate the idea of a reasoning model versus an omni model. They are both. So you pick your model, and then you can turn on reasoning or not. So they kind of went their own route. Google did go closer to ChatGPT. They're a little bit more in parity. They have Flash, which is the faster omni model, Pro, which is the slower reason model. The problem is they have 35 other models, and they change it every week. So when I said this is accurate as of 4/17, that was me being honest. This could all be different tomorrow. But as long as you pick the one you like, you don't have to pay attention to that. You can ignore it. One other neat thing about this, and I feel like Anthropic is doing really well at this, ChatGPT is a little behind, is all of these companies know that having multiple models is terrible for the consumer. That having to know this actually defeats a lot of the magic. And that's a big problem. So everybody is trying to get better reasoning omni models so that you just don't worry about it. You just go in and it looks at your question, and the first thing it does is say, okay, is that something I need to think deeply about, or can I be quick and have the best of both worlds? And they just don't fully have the confidence to do that yet. One thing I will say is that O3, initially, the reasoning models lacked a lot of the other features, so it kind of made you choose what you want. Do I want to be able to upload an image and have it resolve that? In the older days of reasoning before O3, it didn't do it, so you had to go the omni model. And as a user, again, terrible UX of this amazing, simple technology, you had to know which features were each supported, and that changed basically by the week. That is all gone. Both of these models do basically everything you want. One of them is slower, and depending on your license, might give you fewer of them, whereas the Omni one, you typically have unlimited access, and you can use it for most general stuff. Okay, I'm going to cover a lot that I feel is important and hopefully exciting to you, but if there is only one thing, and it's because I've seen this experience so much at my own company that you walk away with, it is that you need to switch your model right now to get the best answer. Otherwise, you will have a subpar experience. And I'll give you an example. Recently, my head of finance, who, like everyone else, is getting very excited about and adopting AI for absolutely everything, she had spent 2 days trying to get GPT to do something for her. Just 2 days going crazy, expecting that because it worked so well for me, it would work for her, and she wasted this absurd amount of time. And she hit me up for a one-on-one, and she's like, I need you to look into this. What can you do? Blah, blah, blah. And we kind of went back and forth. I was like, well, what model are you using? And she's like, 4.0. I was like, try O3. It's like, done, solved. It did it in one prompt. So literally 2 days of work loss of just going crazy and hating this stuff, to not realizing that she could even change that model and suddenly having this very complex, sophisticated answer that she didn't have before. I will throw out that just like, maybe even worse, to Google and Gemini, they do have a bunch of other ones. Don't care about them. Do not pay attention to them. O3 Pro, for example, takes about 15 minutes to do most queries, and it will get you an answer that's maybe a couple % better than O3. It is not really important unless you're getting into deep sciences and deep math and the things that you're going to go work on your doctorate for. Then O3 might be good for you, understanding that you're going to wait 15 minutes. But otherwise, just stick to 4.0 and O3 or whatever they replace them with tomorrow. Okay, I'm going to give everyone one little kind of fun tip here and a hint that I think everybody should go play with for one reason that I'm going to walk into. So there's another one that came out a few months ago called DeepSeek, and it immediately got a very bad reputation because it came out of China, and there's a lot of fear that the Chinese government's going to get all the data and whatnot. And honestly, not my place to say. It is an open source model. Technically, you can download it and run it locally. Almost no one here probably has a computer that can actually do that, including me. That's not important. So whether or not it is taking sensitive data doesn't matter for what I'm about to show you. If you go to DeepSeek, which is a free model, and you choose their version of deep thinking, that's their reasoning model, what it does that's absolutely incredible is it gives you the full log of its thought process. And this is fascinating. Like, it is absolutely incredible how it thinks. And the reality is, hopefully we all understand, it's not actually thinking. It is trained off how people think and how people operate, and it starts to use words and whatnot that are familiar with us, which is part of the magic. But no matter what you ask it, being able to see the full chain of thought for how it processed is amazing. And if you use OpenAI stuff or the others, most of them will give you little snippets that change, but they actually consider it proprietary. OpenAI has flat out said that if they showed their whole reasoning model, that would give their competitors an edge. Being that this is open source, they don't have that fear. So when I ask it, what the most popular bird is in California, I frankly don't care if the Chinese government has that question. They can have it. But I get to really learn how this stuff works at a deeper level. And again, it's entirely free. It's really interesting. I really like it. I don't use it for company stuff that I might have concerns or my customers might have concerns. But I use it for kind of fun learning stuff all the time, and it's really good. Me personally, and I don't think anyone else in this room should do this, or maybe only a couple people in this room, I use pretty much all of these models all the time. So I use Claude, I use Gemini, I use OpenAI, and I run a lot of things against all of them, and I kind of learn what I like and what I don't like, and I compare things, and I do crazy things. It's fun, I find it exciting, you shouldn't do it. Okay, number 2, again, this is very basic stuff to some folks who've been in this for a while, but it's these things that kind of turn people into this and love it that I've kind of discovered over time that I want to share. And this one's incredibly simple. But you can customize your entire experience to make things more easily and deeper than any software you've ever used with this one little button here. So open your top right-hand menu. It's also on the mobile app, and provide custom instructions. And anybody who says that, oh, that reads like AI, chances are it's because the person who did it had no idea what they were doing, and more importantly, didn't do this. And to kind of show you an example of what this looks like, once you get here, it's going to ask you a couple questions, and you can answer it however you want. And again, I'm putting all this in the notes so that you can see it, but this is mine. And just to kind of give you a sense in case you can't read it, I start with focus on substance over praise, skip unnecessary compliments or praise that lacks depth, engage critically with my ideas, questioning assumptions, identifying biases, and offering counterpoints where relevant. Don't shy away from disagreement if it's warranted, and ensure that any agreement is grounded in reason and evidence. Anybody who complains that their AI is just too positive and praiseworthy of them, this gets around that. Mine does not typically say nice things about me.
So sufficacy, right? Which is that?
Sorry, what?
The sufficacy, right?
Yes, yes. It will no longer be a sycophant. That is true. Sycophant. Okay. The next one is where I think it gets a little more, like, honestly, that first one, I think everybody should use. I just kind of wish the models worked that way. It's better, frankly, except when it's in like therapy mode, maybe. But the second half of this is where it gets much more interesting for me personally, and where you guys would customize it for your own needs. There's a couple things in here that I think everybody would find benefit in, but there's some that are very unique to us. So, I give it my context. I tell it who I am and what our company does so that it can use that in responses to me, and it does constantly. I tell it about my experience as an entrepreneur. I tell it that I like answers in plain language. I want things to be brief and fast. I've got a lot of things on my plate. I also tell, and this is one of my favorites, again, this is just how I consume information, I tell it I like bulleted lists. I don't like big paragraphs of data. I am like definition ADD, and the ability to just quickly get bulleted lists of information is incredibly valuable to me. That alone decimates Google or anything else that I'm going to find. The other that I do that, again, could be very unique to your own industries is you'll notice on this part I say if I provide a company name, I want a summary of what they do, and a rough size in both revenue and employees with a bulleted list of key events, including their founding, funding, acquisitions, top competitors, other major events. If you notice, I did some weird things with like and signs and whatnot. It's because I literally ran out of characters and had to shorten this down because I was going so deep in it. And from there, it says if they have any publicly accessible user research, innovation, or beta programs, give me a summary and links. So anytime a lead comes in, I hear about a company, I meet one of you, if I type your company name in here, not only will I get all the core context that brings me up to speed very quickly, but I get that context relative to my business and things that I might want to know or need to know. The last few are very useful, and again, I think everybody might enjoy these. If I put 2 company names in, like if I literally just go to my GPT and type 2 company names, it knows exactly what I want. It knows that I want that same thing built out in a table to compare those 2 companies, which for me becomes a very valuable thing very often. Next, if I just give it a URL, I probably use this one 10 times a day. If I just give it a URL, I tell it exactly how I want that summarized. And spoiler, this gets past most gating of news websites and everything else. I can just get a quick summary of anything. I very rarely read a full web page anymore. I just don't do it. And I was never particularly focused on it anyway. The last one is the most effective for me. For some reason, it doesn't work for Chris, so he's very jealous. If you've ever noticed, one of the most telling things of AI is that it adds M dashes instead of the typical little minus that we've all used because that's what's easily available to us and we're human. And it does it the appropriate way, ironically, which is an M dash, but we all, because it's so appropriate, immediately know. I told it that it offends me when it does that and never use them or suggest them in anything you write or review. And I've never seen another M dash in a single thing I've written. For whatever reason, it doesn't work for Chris. Like, it is absolutely trolling him. The other fun thing, I actually forgot about this, but Chris will appreciate this one. The other fun thing is if you have coworkers who have ChatGPT, it is really fun to go edit their custom stuff and put in random things that they just won't think to see. And we used to like put in things like, I want you to rhyme everything. And people will just start using it and they have no idea it's doing that until they start to get this sense of like, something's weird. Why is it doing this? And I don't remember what the other ones we did originally, but it used to be like if you left your laptop and left the conference room, bad things were going to happen. Okay, the next one is sort of my take on perpetual learning and going back to that theme of being the smartest one in the room. And I tell a story, I've told it before, some people have probably heard it. It's one of the few things I really like to repeat in this space. But one day I had a random thought, it's a true story. I wondered why a bull market was called a bull market and why a bear market was called a bear market. And I didn't know, right? And the reason I like this, the reason I talk about this one specifically is because to me that is emblematic of 1,000 things that happen to me every day. There's many, many things that come across my desk that I only understand by context, or I know the acronym, but I don't know what it means. And you kind of live in this sense of getting by context. And there's a little bit of imposter syndrome in there, which I think most people have to some reasonable sense. But the reality is there's so much information in the modern era that's incredibly difficult to really understand what's going on. And this was just a random question that I had that I actually wondered. And I had my assumptions, and I asked around, and nobody's actually answered right, but I asked around, and my assumptions, just it's too big a room to play quiz here, but my assumption was that a bull market was because the bull's horns went up, and the bear market was because they hibernated, and it's when you charge forward and when you don't invest. So I did what back at the time when I first had this idea, everybody did, was you go Google it, right? For 25 years or however long it is, feels like 25 years, I think it's more like 20, we've answered all our questions by going to Google prior to this GPT era. And this is literally what I got. I got a link off off one of the Google search results that led me to this site, which was Investopedia. Chances are you're going to get a Motley Fool article, something like that, some form of content. And that is the web page that answered my question. It was a cookie bar. It was a sticky video overlay that moved with the page. It had a full screen overlay at one point that tried to get me to subscribe. It had 21 ads, 1,700 words, tons of scrolling. And the reality is, and unfortunately a lot of us probably work for some of these companies, they had no interest in answering my question. They wanted my attention, right? If the product's free, the product is you. That absolutely stood true here. And whether we know it or not, this is how we, over the last couple decades, have come to use the internet. It's like we've had to train ourselves to filter around this at rapid speed. And that same question asked to ChatGPT was this. Why is a bull market called a bull market and a bear market called a bear market? It's actually interesting, to me at least. It's because a bull thrusts with its horns up and a bear swipes with its paws down. And therefore, that is how those market stock symbols work. No cookie, no video overlays, no screen overlays, no ads, 64 words total, no scrolling. And then it would read it to me and I can ask follow-on questions. That's incredible. Again, this may be less impactful than it was a year ago because we've kind of lived in it for a little bit here, but I'm still blown away by that. That is still magic to me, that is that simple. And what is unfortunate is I have in the back of my soul a feeling that it's probably not going to stay this way forever, that they're going to find a way, like all things internet, to make it terrible over time, but let's enjoy it until then. Let's have a good time with it. So what I'm really trying to say here is that it is so incredibly easy to get confidence through this clarity that whenever anything hits me that I don't understand, and again, it happens dozens of times a day, I just search it and get a very quick answer using my custom context that it's bullet points and I get through it quickly, and I learn more and more about every facet of my business, of my world, of my life, every single day, and it is absolutely incredible. So for me, I add it to a note in my phone and come back to it later, but as I said, I think everyone to some degree, and I will certainly admit it myself, having been doing this for a very long time, it's virtually impossible to not have some level of imposter syndrome with how fast the world is moving around us. This is the single best remedy for that I have found. It makes it very easy to do it in real time, but it does require some muscle memory. It requires you to think like this. One of the things I would recommend most people do is use the ChatGPT extension that actually replaces Google so that everything goes to here and you choose what you want to go to Google for. I find that ChatGPT is much slower if I just want to figure out how to spell a word right. Google's good at that because it puts it at the very top. Virtually everything else, ChatGPT is a better answer for at this point.
But Google does that now. I mean, it's defaults to the AI mode.
They do, and it's pretty terrible. It is not particularly good, and their motivations for doing it are not exactly great either, so I'm not a fan of it. I actually have that turned off at the moment, because if I go to Google, I do have a very specific need for it, and if I'll go to Gemini if I want their actual AI. Okay, number 4, and again, about half the room did not raise their hands for this, so hopefully this is going to be an important one. Deep research, in my mind, is the king of AI right now. Deep research is a feature of most of the systems. Gemini has it, Anthropic has it, OpenAI, of course, has it. It is incredible, and what it basically means is the tool will go out and do an incredible amount of research and reasoning to provide you a very well-formed and very lengthy answer to something. And everyone here automatically has research as part of your job. Again, it's core to almost all white collar at this point. But while Google and the internet made it easier pre-internet, like this is to get information and access things, this really is the next generation. I'm going to show just one dumb example in a minute here. But again, this is a takeaway. I need people to understand just how amazing it is to be able to get something truly custom about any thought you have. And like I said, I'm going to show you a weird example. As I already said, most of the models support this. Okay, my animations are a little wonky, so I'm just going to do that. Couple things about this. It is not fast. It typically takes about 10 to 30 minutes, which in AI world should tell you just how hard it's working and how much it's doing. It produces between 20 and 50 page reports for most things, so anything you want, literally anything you want to know about, it can put that together for you. I've had it build business plans based on information in numerous different languages that there's no world I would have ever even been able to access or read, but it can. It's incredible. You get to it by, on your chat bar, simply going deep research, tagging that, and it will turn it into deep research. It's similar in the other systems. This changes constantly. They seem to redo the little core of their UI pretty much every other week, but look for deep research and use it. Now, as an example, and this is one I brought up that kind of, I think, kicked off me doing this, just before we had the last one of these, I had mentioned somewhere along the lines that I had built a guide to a upcoming Japan trip through deep research. And what I did that was so cool is I gave it numerous pages of context to build out the absolute perfect trip for me. So I told it my daughter and what she's into, my son, what he's into, what I like, the fact that my wife had no interest in going to Japan, what my kids eat, all these things. And it planned out the hotels, the dinners. I told it that my wife didn't particularly like busy areas, and therefore we wanted to balance our trip every other day between something where you can't go to Japan where there's not a lot of people. We wanted to go kind of back and forth. The whole thing. You know, I said that we like capybara, or my daughter was really into capybara. We went to a capybara cafe. It planned out every day of a 2-week trip, and that report, I actually had about a 30 or 40 page report that it then converted into a deck for me, which I used a different tool to create a presentation for my family to show them everything we were going to do. It had a page on Japanese etiquette, on travel tips, on absolutely everything. And it was 100% customized for me. That's the takeaway. It's not just that it did all this cool research, that it was a really complicated search. It's that it based it on us. Now, I've already had a few people ask, like, how the trip went. Did I go? We did most of it. The only thing that I didn't think about, and it didn't warn me because it's nowhere in my context, is that, my God, Japan is hot this time of year. So anything that involved being at, like, Disneyland for a day, we just didn't do. It was just way too hot. So I now know for my next trip to factor weather into my queries, and it will get better. But the entire query that we did use, this is about a third of it, I do have in the speaker notes. So if anybody wants to swap in their own stuff and see some of the things we thought about, and the fact that I told it, like, you need to find things that fit our dietary needs, just tell us where to go. And we followed it. It was great. This actually is a single page example of what we got. And again, just so you guys have it, it tells where we're going to arrive, what forms of transportation we're going to use, where we're going to check into the hotel, who's going to do everything. I mean, the whole thing. And this was just one page, one day. And it did end with, okay, this is the crowd level of this area. This is what we're going to spend on dinner and transportation and everything else. I even gave it a budget and told it I needed the whole trip to fit within that budget. And then it gave me a table breaking down what everything was going to be. 10 years ago, we would have called that a travel agent. This took me, I will admit I went nuts with the prompt. You probably don't need to do that, but I had a lot of fun writing a 3-page prompt about my family. It's a lot of self-reflection there. But it was a good time, and it enjoyed it, and it created a pretty incredible trip that, again, my wife, who typically plans these trips, but we don't go to Asia, we mostly go to Europe or whatever else, she was very nervous about the language and the train systems and things like that. And this got rid of that anxiety. This helped us understand exactly what we needed to do when, which was pretty incredible. Okay, some tips before I move on to some more agent discussion. And again, this is like, because I have you, is kind of how I thought about it. I have endless of these things that I experience as I go that I just want to share because it's so much fun. My team is probably almost certainly sick of it by now, so you guys get to step in there. I can't emphasize enough how much you need to treat this like a conversation and how much more you will get out of this if you don't look at the first response and say, well, that's crap, that's not interesting, but rather continue down that line. Iterate. Iterating is so important in this world. From your position as product people, which in my mind requires a lot of brainstorming and creativity, it is the best sparring partner in the world. It's available 24 hours a day. It responds very quickly. It is not a substitute for us getting together in that conference room. That is phenomenal, and we're having an on-site all week this week, so it's been a lot of fun. But when you don't have those things, it is an absolutely incredible resource that is available to you. The other one that even I admit I'm not as good at as, say, Chris, is to use AI what we sort of call recursively. The fun thing whenever I'm kind of workshopping ideas with Chris is we'll get to a certain point and then we don't know what to do next. And then we'll have the AI do these 5 things and then we don't know what to do. Well, then we feed those 5 things to the AI and say, hey, if you can do these 5 things, what else can you do in this context? And then it just gives us more things. We just keep going and it feeds itself in the most interesting way. There's also a lot of custom GPTs out there. I didn't talk a lot about custom GPTs. I think it was on one slide, but basically what it allows you to do is segment out GPT, provide it some custom knowledge and files and whatnot, give it a little bit of direction, and then it becomes a bot organized specifically for that. So we have a Centercode bot that anyone at the company could go ask any information they want about Centercode. I created a digital twin of myself that I wrote 140 or so pages of every thought I had so that I would have a digital version of me that knows how to write like me, knows how to do everything like me. They're really cool. There's also a ton of free ones out there for anything you want to do. So recently I bought a new music production device. I went and immediately got a custom GPT that had been trained to be a support person for that device. And I could just have conversations and ask questions about it. It's really, really cool. The other one, I sort of already alluded to this, but I'm almost burying the lead on all the real things you can do with it. It's great for professional, obviously. On a personal level, I have had so much fun. I am of that generation, of course, that has kids that spend all their time looking at their phones, and it deeply offends me despite being the tech nerd I am. And if we go to dinner, I've got 2 kids that just want to sit on their phones and do whatever they're doing on their phones. I have them put their phones down, and we use GPT to create quizzes about very specific things they love. So, my daughter loves a certain video game. I have it create a quiz about that game, and then I quiz her on it. My son tries to get involved, and I turn it into an amazing family event that just wouldn't be possible otherwise. And we've done many, many different things like that, but I use it as a means to kind of fight the endless screen time and whatnot that, at least in our family, we're kind of dealing with. The last thing, and then I'm going to move on to the agent conversation here, is a piece of advice that was given to me. I don't claim this one, but I think it's pretty brilliant. Very early on in my AI journey, which was kind of how to approach AI in the most generic way possible, especially if you're kind of nervous about it taking away the things that you love. And really it comes down to a very simple sort of choice here. If you're comfortable with something, if you enjoy it, you're good at it, do it. And then use AI as a sounding board to make sure it's as good as possible. If you're not comfortable with doing something or you just don't like it, have AI do it, but then you become the sounding board to make sure it fits whatever your ultimate goal is. And as simple as that seems, it becomes a very great fork in the road whenever you're looking at anything that you want to get done. And it's something that I've used 100 times because there are things that I like. AI didn't write any of this deck. I like writing these decks. It's fun. But there's a lot of things I don't enjoy or I'm not good at that I do want it to do. I always want the human touch in there to make sure that I agree with it because ultimately I am accountable for anything that it does. But I don't want to do the work if it's something I just don't enjoy. And to me, that's one of the biggest takeaways of what you can get out of AI. Okay, moving on to the next piece here, which maybe will be the meat, we'll see. I want to talk a little bit about agents. And I don't know, how many here feel they at least have an idea of what an agent is? Okay, about half. Maybe a little bit more. One of the best parts of my job is that I get to talk to a lot of executives from very large companies that have a lot of responsibility under them, as well as a lot of really great product people, specifically about the future. If I go meet with a customer as CEO, I don't frankly really want to talk much about our product. I spent 20 years talking about our product. I get to know them, their challenges, what's keeping them up at night, the things our product doesn't do that they're not even thinking about solving, and inevitably we start talking about the future. And recently there's only two things we talk about, AI and tariffs. AI is the much more interesting one, and it's been really fun to see how they're thinking. And a lot of our customers, especially in the software space, are definitely thinking of a world where they have to deal with the fact that a lot of their users might not even be human. Or they might have humans using AIs that they're responsible for in all of this. And as a result of this, throughout a lot of travel I did over the last few months, this agent trend started to really pop up. And obviously I was reading it in all my own news and whatnot, but I was really seeing it in a tangible way in terms of how companies and executives at companies are thinking about this next generation and how it's going to work. So these conversations shape how I run the company, obviously. I talk to a lot of smart people, a lot of people smarter than me. And recently, I had an all-hands the day before I went to Japan with a lot of recent epiphanies and whatnot about how we are going to bake this into Centercode. And as I said, I'm literally sharing a mostly unedited, I took a couple things that wouldn't mean anything to you out, but a good chunk of that all-hands. And I just wanted to go through it in a very transparent way. So the first thing is, I told my team, our goal with AI is to scale with electricity. And just to get ahead of this one a little bit, like, am I a evil CEO that wants to hire AI and not people? Kinda. Not really, but I know that that's what I'm up against, and I know that that's what I'm ultimately going to have to deal with, and I know that my responsibility is to my team, my investors, my customers. So again, genie's out of the bottle. Do I think it's exciting and fun? Yes. Do I like the idea of entry-level jobs being dead? No, not really. In this era of agents, I think the starting point is to just recognize that we started with LLMs as a way to answer questions, generate content, and to me that was exciting enough. I'd have been fine if it ended there. The next thing we got that, again, is probably ahead of most people, it's still kind of bleeding edge to some degree, is the concept of AI workflows. And a lot of people confuse AI workflows with agents, including myself up until just a few weeks ago. An AI workflow is when you're basically setting up, I want this to happen, and then I want an AI to look at it, and then do one of these two things based on the outcome, and I might do something else, but I have a fixed thing that ends with a fixed thing, and that's the workflow. And if you've ever used something like Zapier or tools that kind of do basic automation, that's a slightly smarter version than that. It has a decision-making point in that, but that's really what it is. What we're now moving into is a step past that, which is this concept of an agent. And the way an agent works is that it is given goals, not specific things to do, but objectives, and a set of tools and information and memory to go achieve those goals, and then it goes and does that. And again, this is meant for my team. I'm probably going to keep saying that instinctively. I believe this is going to feel very weird to all of us for the foreseeable future. And I want to explain kind of an example of a real world one, and this is one that Chris is already doing. It's not product, but he's product marketing, so close enough. This is the kind of thing to wrap your head around that you can have it do. And again, there's some things in here that are, in my mind, incredibly impressive. Like, I think I have kind of lost touch with just how impressive a basic model is that I can give it a fuzzy prompt. Right? If you think about how computers worked 5 years ago, everything was binary. You tell it to do something, it does that thing. The fact that I can give it something incredibly fuzzy and it can do so much is incredible. This is amping that up to 11. Because if you look at that first line, what I'm really telling it is, hey, I need you to get our blog traffic up by 20%. I'm not going to tell you the strategy on how to do that. I don't even know how to do that. I literally don't know how to do that. I would have to do a lot of work to figure that out. But I'm going to give you, the agent, tools. I'm going to give you access to go into our SEO reporting tool and look at how our blog posts are doing and see which ones we're doing better and worse. And I'm not going to tell you how to do that. I'm just giving you access to the tool. It's your job to figure out how all of that works. I'm also going to give you access to our CMS. A lot of companies use things like WordPress. We use one called Webflow. Webflow has got a system that allows us to do all this. So you're going to have access to pull our blogs down, make updates, edit them, do whatever you want. Like, I'm just telling you to increase traffic. I'm not telling you to edit posts. I'm just telling you to increase traffic. Good chance you're going to have to edit some posts to increase traffic, but I'm not telling you to do that. I'm also going to give you access to Slack so that you can communicate with me. And to me, this was another one that, like, one wake-up call after another, because I kind of realized at this point, and I've thought about this in different degrees for a while, that it almost feels like the world has been leading toward this. Like, I don't know if it's causation or correlation, but with COVID, many of us went remote or got much more comfortable working in Slack as opposed to walking into offices. Prior to COVID, Centercode had a much bigger office on the other side because we all came in. Once we went remote, we don't need it. But we're all used to Slack as the primary means to communicate. So the idea of a bot communicating with me through Slack is effectively no different than another person. So that's kind of fascinating. Same with Gmail, right? We all use email. We've done that one for a long time. But the idea that it could just know that, hey, this is a tool. I know that tool can reach out to a person. I know I'm working with this person, so I might want to use that once in a while. I then tell, the next step here is let me optionally improve anything you want to update. So we're not giving it full comfort right now to go do whatever it wants, full agency. We're telling it to go into the data, figure out the problem, figure out the post that you think should be updated, update that post for me, but then send me a link to it in Slack. But even cooler than that is we're time gating it. We're basically saying, look, if I don't respond to you, you do have the agency to go do it. I don't want to be a gate. I'm a time gate. So I have whatever time I put. At this point in paying, I think I would say a day, right? I have a day to read it, and if not, I want you to post it because it's not that important. Maybe that's just this context, right? Then I can tell it, I also want you to report on your goal once a week. Just send me a Slack message about how you're doing. And then once a month, I want you to send me a full report, very detailed in email. And I could, of course, go as far as I want in providing more depth here. Now, again, to me, this is mind-blowing. Like, this is crazy. Because I'm not telling it what to do. I'm telling it what I want achieved. And I'm giving it a series of set of tools. Now, if you squint, you can start to see why we all should be afraid of our jobs if we don't adopt it appropriately. Because there's nothing here that I also wouldn't do with a marketing intern, except I would have to do a hell of a lot more on that first one to make sure it gets done. And there's a lot more risk and a lot more cost, and you can suddenly see why this is as either scary or exciting as it could be. And just to give it a little bit of context, and I would encourage everybody to play with this, there's a platform, which again, this one was Chris, introduced me to on the marketing side. It's called N8N. It has nothing to do with marketing. It is a very, very simple platform for making very powerful automations and workflows. And all this one is actually doing is basically saying, hey, whenever I chat with you, I want the bot who has access to all of these tools on the bottom here to do whatever I ask. And this isn't a bot that's acting autonomously on its own, but if I ask it to go do something, it can autonomously do whatever it needs to get to that result. And I can trigger this to happen every day, or I can trigger it to happen when I respond to it, or I can communicate with it through Slack. I've given it a memory, I've let it think. I don't even know what the calculator does. Chris can probably speak to that one. But this is a fully autonomous bot once I get it going. And this is effectively free. This is an open source platform. You can download and host it yourself, or you can pay like $20 a month and get access to a good amount of it, which is what we're doing at this point. Is Chris is building out these things, and he was doing it while he was on vacation. Now, the next one is very much geared toward my team, but I think a lot of people in this room will probably appreciate it. Again, Douglas Adams. This is something that I kind of use to frame this to my team, which, it's a quote they've probably heard before at this point, but Douglas Adams once said, I've come up with a set of rules to describe our reactions to technology. Anything in the world when you're born is normal, ordinary, and just natural. It's just the way the world works. To my kids, AI is going to be very normal. Anything invented between 15 and 35 is new, exciting. You can probably get a job doing it. Anything invented after you're 35 is against the natural order of things. I am 47 as of last week. It is a struggle at times to adopt this stuff, as enthusiastic as I am. If I didn't have a certain little nerd part of me, I don't think I'd be nearly as enthusiastic, because new things do scare me at this point, and I think that's natural. This was, again, for my team, but I had HR run the math, and 77% of my company is over 35. So sort of pointing out, like, hey guys, we're going to have to push. We're going to have to fight for this. It's not going to be as natural as we wish it was. But change is here. The world is rapidly changing, and it's our job, and all of you within your companies as well, to stay ahead of that curve. Like it or not, that is how capitalism works. The next phase of business is all going to be about minimum team size for maximum output. And again, that may sound scary. You might not like that, especially if you're looking for a job. But there is going to be, and I'll talk more about this in a bit, a place for the people, but they've got to be the people that adopt the thing that is moving. And it just goes back to, if you'd have refused to use the internet at a certain point or adopt that, then you'd have been aged out. If you wouldn't use a computer, going back even further, you'd have had a big problem. This is just the next one. And again, the older we get, the harder it is, but it can be and is very exciting. So getting into the meat of how we're approaching this, and how I believe a lot of companies are going to approach this, is we went to our whole team and we said, okay, moving forward, you want to think of yourself as a manager of these agents. And we want to personify these agents in such a way that you can take ownership of them, that everybody becomes a manager. You will hire and onboard your agents. You're accountable for training them, for shaping them, for selecting the different tools and systems, building them in some cases. Literally the idea of having one-on-ones with your agents, which is basically just scheduling time to make sure that it's automating and working as it should. And where it gets really interesting, again, getting into the kind of human analogy here, is you're responsible for their hits and misses, which is, in my mind, a good thing. If you've got an agent that's doing a ton of work for you, in my company, you get credit for that. And I think that's how it's going to work in many companies, hopefully. But at the same time, if you're lazy and just let your agent do the work while you go watch TV, you're going to take that hit. So you're given a power to scale yourself, going back to the scale with electricity theory, but at the same time, you get the goods and the bads of that, just like anything else. And to me, and this isn't all companies obviously, but that's how we've always looked at management as well. You know, our managers don't brag about their team's accomplishments as if they were their own. That is like a death knell at Centercode. It's the manager automatically gets credit for whatever their team does, good and bad, right? It flows up. So they reward their teams and celebrate their teams. This is the same. Now here, and I'm hoping other companies take into it as well, it's not about just, you know, the rich get richer. It really is about building incentives so that we can scale this way. You know, it is, like it or not, very, very challenging and expensive to scale a company, and you get to certain points where that's harder than others, especially in a marketing as challenging as now. This becomes a means, and in some cases, unfortunately, an excuse to do that. Now, in terms of where these come from, for us, again, speaking to my team, we're going to build some of our own. We have a very technical team. We have people that just love digging into this stuff, and they will do it with tools we already have that are incredibly inexpensive. But there's also an incredible amount of commercial tools that make this possible very, very inexpensively. You know, we used a tool for a while called First Quadrant, which was effectively a sales assistant AI. Copilot, which when I complained earlier about Microsoft's naming, this is part of why. Copilot means 25 different things in Microsoft world. In this one, it's what our engineers use as a coding assistant called Copilot, not the one that comes in the web browser or whatever else. Another one, which I'm going to touch on in just a minute here, is something called VO. And VO is something I was introduced to 2-3 weeks ago, I don't know when, but I have never fallen in love with something faster in my life. It's something that I had seen videos on, but as you might imagine, I have this big backlog of exciting technologies that I want to play with. I've never played with Google's VO, but I really want to. V0, different, is one that was kind of on my radar for a while. I do a lot of product design still, and it was interesting for that, but I live in Figma, so it was kind of my competition to that, and only recently did I dig into it. I'm going to show a little bit of that in a moment. Others will be AI, but they're not necessarily agents. We're also starting to use a new platform called Time Machine, which is an incredible training tool. It is a tool that allows you to kind of train it in your company, and then it can train employees and train partners and customers and so on. So it's sort of an AI LLM, or not LLM, LMS, sorry, too many acronyms. And it's really, really cool. Okay, the way we're going about this, and again, I would recommend you guys do the same even without leadership pushing you necessarily, is I asked my team to map their job responsibilities into subduties and tasks. Not to show us per se, but for their own use. And one of the other things about Centercode that we do is we believe it's very important to be incredibly clear about job responsibilities. So the job posting matches the job offering, matches is the review process. It's incredibly important that HR is on top of that and everybody understands their responsibilities and accountability at all times. So that means, luckily, everybody in my company already has a starting point here. But those are job responsibilities. Their job is to take that and then break it down to the individual tasks. And then look at each of those tasks and define agents around them. And we're doing it literally as treating it as if we're hiring interns or sort of entry-level people. We're defining them, we're giving them names. Everybody is picking a cartoon of their choice and theming them around there because that's how we roll. They're giving them goals, they're giving budgets for what we need for the tools and whatnot, just like any other job we would hire. They're creating workflows for tasks, just really cool stuff around whatever those individual jobs are. We're also sort of pointing out that it's not just, oh, if I were going to hire an entry-level employee, how would I do it? It's consider what you don't do but should, right? I don't keep up as well on ongoing competitive information as I should. I just don't have the time at times. But I now have an agent that goes and summarizes it all for me in a meaningful way, sends it to me in Slack every day, and it's just a quick little bulleted list. And that's barely an agent, that's a workflow at best, but that's the kind of thing that I should be doing it. I just never had the bandwidth for it. So you can kind of extend to those things and go beyond today. Also, what you couldn't do, like I could have technically done that, I just didn't. There are things that I couldn't do because of scale or whatever the actual pattern was that I theoretically can now. But the one thing I did warn my team of is this is a mental model to work around, but it's not foolproof. Like you don't want to think about everything. We were joking yesterday about, you know, what's it's going to take to get an agent to go to HR. You don't want to take it too far. There's a lot of things that it can't do or won't do or shouldn't do. but it can do certain things better. We've been doing a lot of pair programming with AI recently, and I'm not a programmer anymore. Rob over there, who's my product director, is not a trained programmer, but he is working in code every single day now through some of these tools. We're going back and forth with these agents, and it has been an incredible learning experience. Then what we're doing at the company, which would probably scare a lot of people, but again, how we roll, is I'm going to have everybody present their agents to the whole company so that everybody else gets ideas for what agents they can do, and we start filling in the gaps and doing really, really cool things. Now, the other thing that's very important, and this is something that I think a lot of companies are probably falling down on, is not providing the appropriate training or environment for doing this. So for us, that's a big priority, is going to the team and saying, okay, we don't expect you to go learn everything I've learned. That times all of our people is a huge waste of time and money. We should all be learning from each other. So we formed an AI council and kind of let anyone in the company apply for it under some certain guidelines, but that council becomes responsible and accountable for making sure the entire company is adopting all of this. So that's for evangelizing it internally and externally, which technically I guess I'm getting credit for that today. And then we are considering if I want to hire someone specifically around this, someone who's just as obsessed with this as I am, because one of the problems that I'm quickly realizing is as soon as we roll out these agents, they're going to be leaning on Chris and myself and Rob, and we're some of the most expensive sort of opportunity cost resources in the company. That is not ideal for scaling. So we might have to have some folks who are dedicated specifically to this. Now, the next thing, and hopefully this is meaningful to you guys and something that you do think about, especially if you're out of work at the moment, we're only going to be hiring for what AI can't do. I have not let a single person go, due to AI being a replacement for them, nor do I intend to or plan to. I have told my team flat out, you won't be replaced by AI, but you might be replaced by somebody who uses it if you don't. That is still top of mind. But our core values and the skills that we value are reshaping around this. Because of what AI does to augment your capabilities, it's really all about, are you curious enough to get into this? Are you creative enough to get it to do new things and go outside your comfort zone? Can you communicate with both it and the rest of the company? Because that communication is still the core skill that I think humans working with other humans are going to need. And then, of course, critical thinking. One of the worst things is people that just expect AI to do it and you run into AI slop. Critical thinking plus AI removes AI slop. But if you just get lazy and lean on it because it is so powerful and just kind of assume it's going to do everything, it and you will fail. Okay, again, this was written for my team. It's kind of weird to show it to another group, but I told my team we need to take risks. We need to overcompensate if we fail. Something that I read a long time ago was this report of the hospitality industry and how there was this sort of, I think it was Hilton or somebody did this thing where, if somebody had a bad experience, they would tell 2 or 3 people. If they had a good experience, they'd effectively tell nobody. But if they had a bad experience and the company overcorrected and treated them amazingly, they'd tell 10 people. And so I was kind of getting my team, we have to be willing to take some risks, and if we screw up, we need to overcompensate in making it right, because everything is weird right now. The ultimate goal for us, and I hope many other companies, is a more productive team that, as a result, is fueling our growth, is creating higher margins, and I can reward the team for doing it. Such, I guess I didn't say it out loud, but there was a slide a couple ago that mentioned we're building incentive programs around this. If you have 3 agents that are now allowing you to be that successful, then we need to reward you for that, and that has to be key to the system to motivate you. Otherwise, you're just going to go somewhere else and do it, and capitalism kicks in. To me, the other thing here, and again, maybe this is a fun takeaway for you guys, or hopefully a useful one, is I think us going down this model is going to be useful to everybody, because whether or not they survive at Centercode or want to stay at Centercode, thinking like this is key to the future. I think there's no doubt that this isn't going away. Again, there's a world where I wish they would outlaw it, but unless every country outlaws it at once, it's never going to happen. So until then, can't put the genie back in the bottle. This, again, to my team, may make a little more sense, but we chose 2 teams to be kind of the pathfinders and figure it out. Marketing was the first to adopt this. They kind of created a lot of this. Our marketing is ex-product people, so that makes sense. And then product, which I consider myself the lead of, Rob's on my team, others. We are the pathfinders that kind of work with them and figure it out. And we're already adopting and we're already doing things. I asked everybody, and this was, again, I did this on my way out the door to Japan, to start thinking about this, because we're going to be maturing this in the coming weeks. And as I said, this is an on-site week at Centercode. We're going over all of this. We're going over it as the whole company tomorrow and so on. Okay, last couple things, because I figured this question is going to come up, so I may as well answer it. It comes up a lot, is how do we think this is going to play out long term, especially for product people? And this is something a lot of people here may be thinking, or you may already have your ideas formed, and we can debate them. At best, I have the world's most incredibly foggy crystal ball, because I actually hate theorizing about AI, because it is just an opportunity to be wrong. Everything is an educated guess at best, and there's only a handful of people in the world who that is not true for, and I am not one of them. The first is that I do believe we're going to see fewer specialized roles in companies. I'm already starting to see it. I think we're going to see fewer UX people, market research people, QA people. Those are examples of what I consider to be reasonably specialized roles. I consider product a more generalized role, the very nature of it, and therefore I believe it will continue to exist, but I believe product will use AI and agents to replace those specialized roles. That's just what they're going to be expected to do. And in a normal world, if you go back 5 years, if they got rid of the QA people and said, here's a tool to do QA, you'd quit, because that would make no sense. But in this new era of things being as powerful as they are, it's a reality. And I think we're going to see a lot of it. And the role might not even be called product, but something that feels a lot like product is going to be there. The next one that I believe absolutely, and we are experiencing in real time, is that the lines between product and engineering are going to blur a lot. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. But in software especially, it's just, we are rethinking how we deliver to engineering and how late we deliver to engineering and when it goes to QA. We have no intention of getting rid of QA, but we're now thinking, okay, they get it before product does, or before engineering does, because we can build out fully functional prototypes that can be QA'd before we even work on hooking them in. Just absolutely crazy things. Product managers who don't or won't or can't do any of this won't be product managers for long, and I genuinely believe that. Side note, I already said it, I didn't plan to say it, but I do believe that virtually every white-collar job that is entry-level is going to be the first things to be replaced. It's unfortunate, and I could spend another hour kind of thinking and talking about that one, but the short version is I think we're going to have a real problem for a while until the education system catches up and figures out how to get people into this world. We're going to have a really problematic gap. So if you have teenagers, expect them to be living with you for a while.